Here are the top stories for today, September 17, 2020. Reduce physical distancing in public transportation suspended. President Duterte wants faster transactions in the government. Over 1,000 sakadas and locally stranded individuals benefited from Tupad program. And a teacher thanks President Duterte for zero balance bill. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque announced the suspension of the reduced physical distancing in public transportation. The Department of Transportation earlier eased the physical distancing inside public transport units from 1 meter to 0.75 meters.
Balik 1 meter distancing muna po tayo sa pampublikong transportasyon habang wala pa pong desisyon ang presidente kung ito nga po ay po pwedeng maibaba sa 0.75. Kaugnay rito, maalala niyo po na sinabi ko na baka today po ang desisyon ni presidente. Baka hindi po mangyari yan dahil ang report po na pag-aaralan ni presidente ay isusumiti pa lamang ngayong araw po. At inaasahan natin na siguro po magkakaroon ng desisyon ng presidente sa Lunes sa kanyang susunod na talumpati sa taong bayan. So suspendido po ang 0.75, balik 1 meter, haba pong wala pang desisyon ang ating presidente sa bagay na ito.
President Duterte is urging the Congress to pass laws that will fast-track government processes. In a press briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said that the request was personally made by the president when he met with the leaders of the Congress last night.
Ang napag-usapan po kahapon ng ating presidente, ni Senate President Soto, ni Senator Bongo, ni Speaker Alan Cayetano at Majority Floor Leader Majority Romualdez ay tungkol po sa pagbubukas ng ekonomiya, ang concern ng mga namumunuhunan at negosyante na lubhang naapektuhan ng pandemya ay paano masugpo ang red tape at korupsyon at mapaikli ang mga proseso sa government transactions. Hiningi po ng presidente sa mga congressional leaders na magpasa pa ng mga karagdagang lehislasyon o mga pulisiya para mapabilis po ang proseso ng matulungan ang mga negosyante sa panahon ng pandemya. Dahil wika nga ng presidente, takot na nga sila sa panahon ng pandemya, mabagal pa ang mga proseso sa panig ng gobyerno. Nangako naman po ang mga leaders ng ating Kongreso na pag-aaralan ito at bibigyan po ng katugunan ang kahilingan ng ating presidente.
The medical community in General Santos City is appealing to place the entire area under the stricter Enhanced Community Quarantine or ECQ. The Philippine Medical Association in Gensan said the move was a collegial decision following an assessment of the available manpower in hospitals and other facilities that are catering to COVID-19 cases. According to Dr. Fidel Peñamante, president of the association, the ECQ will give their ranks a breather after being decimated by infection and exposure to the disease. He said the local government needs to further limit the movement of people in the city under a tighter community quarantine policy to prevent the further spread of the disease. At least 12 medical frontliners from public and private hospitals in the city were already infected with COVID-19, while 249 others are under quarantine after being exposed to confirmed cases. Peñamante said they already submitted their letter of appeal to City Mayor Ronel Rivera. President Rodrigo Duterte has ordered 6 government agencies to coordinate and pool their resources and efforts into the production of expedited distribution of free face masks. Under the order, the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, will be the lead implementing and coordinating agency relative to the production and procurement of face masks. With the help from the Department of Health, the DTI will also determine the minimum, most cost-effective, and good quality specifications necessary for the face masks to be effective in protecting against the transmission of COVID-19. On the other hand, the DBM procurement service will be tasked to assist in the procurement of the face masks, and the DSWD must utilize its networks and facilities for the identification of and distribution to the priority beneficiaries of the face masks. Other departments, agencies, and offices of the government, including government-owned or controlled corporations, government financial institutions, and state universities and colleges are directed, and LGUs are enjoined to cooperate and render full assistance. In Sultan Kudarat, at least 2 persons went missing after rampaging waters from the mountains slammed against rising seawaters in the villages of Langili and Medol. Palimbang Mayor Teng Kapinan said the heavy downpour that started Tuesday afternoon until the evening triggered landslides and washed out several homes in Sitio Campo Muslim in Barangay Poblacion. Search for the 2 missing persons, a 12-year-old girl and a 61-year-old grandmother, ended Wednesday afternoon with no signs of life. In Zamboanga City, at least 4.4 million pesos worth of crops were destroyed due to heavy rains and strong winds brought by Typhoon Leon. The typhoon, with winds up to 65 kilometers per hour, lashed the city yesterday, September 16. Around 117 hectares of rice farms were damaged in barangays Culyanan, Cabalway, Giwan, and Talisayan. 41 houses were totally destroyed and 137 others were partially damaged. Assistance will be given to the affected farmers. More contact tracers are needed in Bikol and Sarangani region. In Bikol, more than 3,000 contact tracers will be hired as part of the government's efforts against COVID-19. Those who will be hired will serve until December 31, 2020, with a monthly salary of 18,784 pesos. Interested applicants must submit a letter of intent, personal data sheet, NBI clearance, and drug test. Recruitment process is also ongoing in Sarangani with around 1,500 slots for contact tracers. They will be integrated and assigned in the contact tracing teams of LGUs and will also receive a monthly salary of 18,784 pesos. The DILG said they will prioritize returning overseas Filipino workers who are now unemployed, terminated workers of local establishments and companies, displaced workers in the formal and informal sectors, and barangay health workers. Still to come, major infrastructures in Mindanao are underway under the BuildBuildBuild program, and Yolanda victims in Samar receive free housing units. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Sa matinding laban natin sa Coronavirus Disease 2019, sugpuin din natin ang pagkalat ng fake news. Huwag magbahagi ng impormasyon na hindi tiyak ang pinagmulan. I-check mabuti ang source ng balita. Kumuha lamang ng impormasyon mula sa mga official channel ng Department of Health. Huwag magpadala sa maling balita, basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to. Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito. Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to. Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Mindanao has become the forefront of the government's BuildBuildBuild program, citing the big infrastructure projects. Among these are the construction of the 26 billion peso Davao City Coastal Road and the 45.5-kilometer four-lane bypass road that will begin in Barangay Sirawan in Tori, Davao City to Barangay JP Laurel in Panabo City. The construction of the Davao City Coastal Road is expected to ease traffic congestion in the city's downtown area, while the bypass road will reduce the current travel time in the area from an hour and 44 minutes to just about 49 minutes. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez said the two big infrastructure projects form part of the Duterte administration's thrust to position Davao City as the center for agriculture and industry. Several poor residents in Bukidnon City received food and housing from a private group assisting the marginalized sector affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. More on this from Doreen Mariel Rosales.
Residents Jocelyn Escol and Fernando Cabral cannot contain their happiness with their new houses after having lost their homes to a fire that consumed their neighborhood in August. For a month, they were forced to live in a makeshift dwelling made from scraps left from the fire.
Dako ko pasalamat sa tanan da kuan. Nagtabang sa kuwa kay grabe may pagkalisod kayo.
Pasalamat mi nang nag-sponsor ani na nakabalay gyud mi.
Jocelyn and Fernando are just some of the beneficiaries of the free housing provided by the Task Force COVID Bougainvillea, an independent group from the private sector created to provide assistance to the marginalized in Bukidnon City, especially those who were greatly affected by the pandemic. According to one of the task force's founder, Joey Abrenilla, they started out with just the goal of providing food packs to their neighbors during the onset of the lockdown. Because of the success of their first project, donations have continuously arrived from benefactors locally and internationally.
As we speak right now, the money that we've accumulated is very close to 1 million. Not just for the ayudas, not just for the relief goods, but as you can see, our mission now is even building or helping families without, proper shelter.
This also paved the way for them to provide free housing. To date, around 4,500 individuals from 25 barangays in the city were given food augmentation through the task force's Pagkaon Mo Sagot Ko program. Through its Bahay Mo Sagip Ko project, a total of 16 housing units have now been provided to chosen beneficiaries. The task force is now coordinating with other sectors to provide other forms of assistance such as employment, especially for those whose livelihoods have been compromised due to the crisis. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Doreen Mariel Rosales of the Philippine Information Agency, Caraga.
At least 1,000 housing units in Base Samar were formally turned over on Wednesday to victims of Super Typhoon Yolanda. Cabinet Secretary Carlo Noglares thanked the national government agencies and local government units during the virtual ceremony for their cooperation and swift action in finishing the project. As of June 30, 2020, the National Housing Authority said that about 35,000 housing units allocated for Eastern Visayas have already been completed, with the ongoing construction of almost 11,000 units. The former Davao legislator added the Duterte administration was fully committed to providing decent and safe housing to Yolanda victims. For her part, Mayor Luz Ponferrada said their LGU was ready to partner with national and local agencies to address the social needs of her constituents. 3 centenarians in Legaspi City received cash incentives on Wednesday as part of the implementation of Republic Act 10868, or the Centenarians Act of 2016. Office of Senior Citizens Affairs Chief Wilfredo Incha handed over 30,000 pesos and certificates of commendation to Severina Copioso, Margarita Alcazar, and Alejandra Rosadino. Copioso will be celebrating her 102nd birthday on November 1. Hasmina Copioso Bron, her second daughter, said the secret of her mother's long life is regular planting of crops as part of her daily exercise and balanced diet of vegetables, fruits, and meat. She added that her mother has difficulty in walking, but her eyes could still see very clearly. Recently, the 3 centenarians each received 100,000 pesos from the national government and 50,000 from the provincial government of Albay. Clark International Airport operations of Emirates and Qatar Airways, increasing the number of flights currently being operated by these two international air carriers. Emirates started daily operations of Dubai-Clark-Dubai flights, while Qatar Airways will increase its Doha-Clark-Doha flights to 9 times weekly by adding a Sunday schedule and doubling its Monday and Friday flights. Since the resumption of operations in June, CRK has gradually increased both domestic and international operations, welcoming over 30,000 international passengers as of September 14. Despite heightened health and security protocols being implemented at the airport, all passengers arriving in Clark are treated to a warm welcome and hassle-free arrival experience. Biyong Chunggungko, CEO of Luzon International Premier Airport Development Corporation, said that Clark updates its arrival and departure guidelines in accordance with the protocols set by the Interagency Task Force, as well as guidelines set by each destination. Up next, over 1,000 sakadas and locally stranded individuals benefited from Tupad program. And a teacher thanks President Duterte for zero balance bill. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Tandaan ang tamang paraan ng paghuhugas at paglilinis ng kamay upang makaiwas sa iba't ibang karamdaman. Basain ng tubig ang mga kamay at sabunin. Unang sabunin ang mga palad at ang likod ng mga kamay. Kuskusin na maigi ang pagitan ng mga daliri at maging ang mga kuko. Isunod ang pagitan ng mga hinlalaki at kuskusin ng paikot ang mga dulo ng mga daliri sa magkabilang palad. Banlawang mabuti ang mga kamay sa malinis na tubig at patuyuin ang mga kamay gamit ang single-use towel o air dryer. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito. Alamin kung paano ang tamang pagsusuot ng surgical mask. Una, hawakan ang mask sa strap at siguruhing natatakpan nito ang inyong bibig at ilong. Tandaan, ang may kulay na bahagi ng mask ang dapat nasa labas. Ito lamang ang tamang paraan ng pagsuot nito. Ihulma ang nose piece o maliit na metallic strip ayon sa hugis ng inyong ilong. Iwasan ang paghawak sa inyong ilong at bibig. Kung marumi na ang mask, hubarin ito gamit ang strap at itapon ito sa isang basurahan. Siguruhin ang maayos na paghuhugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. Ang surgical mask ay dapat gamitin ng mga pasyenteng may sakit sa baga o mga taong mayroong ubo, sipon at lagnat, mga nag-aalaga sa mga may sakit, at mga healthcare at frontline workers. Maaari ring magsuot nito kung kayo ay pupunta sa matataong lugar. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
Hundreds of sakadas and locally stranded individuals in Antique have started working under the government's Tupad program for their livelihood after being displaced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here is our report from Janice Cabe.
More than 1,000 sakadas or sugar migrants and locally stranded individuals on Wednesday started their 10-day work under the Tupad program of the Department of Labor and Employment. Dole Antique Provincial Director Melissa Navarra said the beneficiaries of the program are those who returned to Antique after they were displaced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. She said the sakadas and LSIs stranded in Metro Manila were assisted by the repatriation program initiated by Antique Congresswoman Loren Legarda and Antique Governor Rodora Cadiao. The beneficiaries will be receiving each a daily wage of 395 pesos. The beneficiaries are tasked to do environmental cleanup and other works identified as priority of their respective local government units. San Jose de Buenavista Mayor Elmar Untaran said he is glad that the LSIs were able to avail of the Tupad program. He said that the LSIs recounted their difficult situation in Metro Manila, prompting them to come home to Antique to start anew. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
A military official says members and supporters of the New People's Army who decide to abandon the movement deserve the government's support for them to return normalcy back into their lives. Lieutenant Colonel Reynald Romel Gose, commander of the Army's 26th Infantry Battalion, made the statement following the surrender of over 300 NPA members and mass supporters in the town of Esperanza, Agusan del Sur. Local officials welcomed the surrenderers in a ceremony held at the school gymnasium in Esperanza town on Tuesday. The former rebels pledged their allegiance to the government and burned the Communist Party of the Philippines and NPA flags. With their decision to leave the communist movement, Gose said the government is ready to help uplift their economic conditions. He also recognized the support of the local government of Esperanza to the ongoing efforts of the Army in providing security to far-flung villages against the threats of the NPA. Meanwhile, Davao del Norte Governor Edwin Jubahib has accepted the proposal of the Mindanao Development Authority to launch the Adopt a Tribal Family program in the province. Secretary Emmanuel Piñol said the program will involve well-meaning and generous Filipinos in helping the disadvantaged tribal families in Mindanao. Next week, he said, Minda will submit to Jubahib the blueprint of the Adopt a Tribal Family program for approval and implementation. He said Minda will also share the concept paper with the governors of other Mindanao provinces with large tribal populations and convince them to replicate the program. 4 members of an indigenous community in Davao del Norte filed several charges on Tuesday against the leaders of the New People's Army and the United Church of Christ in the Philippines, Haran. At least 48 personalities connected with the UCCP Haran Center were charged with child abuse, forced labor, trafficking in person, and violation of humanitarian law. The 4 complainants are members of the Atamanobo tribe. The 4 accused Haran officials of harboring the New People's Army and for forcing them to work for the communist terrorists against their will, including participating in armed conflict. Authorities accused the Haran Center of harboring NPA combatants and of allegedly serving as their training and recruitment ground. Communications Undersecretary and National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict spokesperson Lorraine Badoy, meanwhile, thanked the individuals who helped in the filing of cases against Haran's officials. Team Lakay's Lito Adiwang is eyeing to challenge Muay Thai champ Rodtang Jit Muangon in the One Championship Octagon. More on this and other sports news from Benj Bondong.
One Championship stalwart Lito Adiwang is setting his sights to take on reigning Muay Thai flyweight champion Rodtang Jit Muangnon. The rising Filipino MMA star of Team Lakay has been open about trying his luck at One's Kickboxing Arm 1 Super Series, and now he wants a clash with a Thai champ to happen. While he respects Jit Muangnon's demolition style of play, Adiwang believes he has what it can take to beat him for the Muay Thai belt. Adiwang said his focus is on his MMA career right now, but if Jit Muangnon makes the jump instead, Adiwang is open to becoming his first MMA opponent. Meanwhile, players from the Philippine Basketball Association supported the proposal to continue the league's postponed season inside the bubble. In a dialogue with Commissioner Willie Marshall on Wednesday, the players said they are fine being secluded in only one place just for the PBA's 45th season, if only to finally resume amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The NBA is so far successful in implementing the bubble system inside the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex in Orlando, Florida, as none of the league's players has contracted COVID-19 at the moment. Marshall will bring the players' plea to the PBA Board of Governors on Thursday in its meeting. Meanwhile, one of the country's top young Scrabble players in cooperation with Mattel and the world's top player are combining forces to stage a youth online Scrabble tournament this October. Learjet de la Cruz of the Cebu Scrabble Club is jointly hosting the national competition with Malaysian Ganesh Asirvatam, the world's top-rated player, and Mattel Incorporated for the youth games. The Inter-School National Scrabble Tournament Philippines will target 50 to 100 complete beginners to the game ages 10 to 12. The games will be staged using the Internet Scrabble Club and will be done in 2 days. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Bench Bondok.
In our foreign news, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Tuesday called on the international community to unite and find a vaccine that is accessible to all. Guterres said amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the world has seen that international solidarity is no longer a choice but an obligation. He said the global community should work together to find a vaccine that is accessible to all and stop the spread of the virus. He also highlighted the need to protect the most vulnerable and reduce the inequalities heightened by the pandemic. The UN commemorated the 59th anniversary of the death of former UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld with the start of the new session of the General Assembly. President Duterte ordered the implementation of the zero-balance billing policy to give Filipinos access to health care. Now, a public school teacher took to social media to thank the president for the policy that saved her family from the heavy cost of surgery. Sid Teresa Alivio Vito, a high school teacher of the Abellana National School, narrated that her stepson figured in a motorcycle accident on August 21 in Barangay Gunob, Lapu-Lapu City. Her stepson, Ryan Cabiga, sustained a fractured right elbow and toe on his left foot. Ryan was brought to the Vicente Soto Memorial Medical Center. The doctor amputated the toe to avoid infection and operated on his damaged elbow. Vito later learned that the VSMMC administration did not collect down payment or deposit for his treatment. Hundreds of patients have already benefited from the Universal Healthcare Program. Before this, the administration established the Malasakit Center to consolidate all financial assistance to patients. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. Reduce physical distancing in public transportation suspended. President Duterte wants faster transactions in the government. Over 1,000 sacadas and locally stranded individuals benefited from Tupad program. And a teacher thanks President Duterte for zero balance bill. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, I am William Theo. Good day and stay safe, everyone.